All right, so tonight our panel is Raquel Thompson from Standing Rock, Kelsey Bless with CFS, and Natalie Anderson with Three Rivers, and we're very happy to have them here and look forward to the information. So thank you, ladies, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off today. Thank you to the association for inviting us to participate in a lot of conversation. I know in the last month we've had some topics that have come up and really just felt this would be a great opportunity to bring together our partners to come and speak with providers who are doing this every day on behalf of children in foster care. And so Raquel from Standing Rock has been gracious to come and join, and we did a little bit of prep work. Thank you for the many questions that were submitted from providers, just curious about how things kind of roll in the system and wanting us to be able to provide you some of that feedback. And Natalie offering a really good perspective from our zone, because we do know in this work, the way that jurisdiction is in our state system is different than how the jurisdiction is in our tribal system. And so just to lay a little bit of groundwork on how the state is involved, for those of you who are not familiar, Children and Family Services has a Title IV-E agreement with Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. And so Standing Rock has opportunity to have a pass-through of funding. So you'll hear a little bit more about eligibility today, but Title IV-E is truly that. It is an eligibility source. It's how the child has their needs met with payment. So if the child's eligibility is IV-E, then the state will pay for all of the needs and resources that are eligible and allowable for that case. If the child is not Title IV-E, then the tribe will maintain the payment source for those children. And we refer to these young children by eligibility at time, which is really not okay. But we'll say 638. So they're either 638 funded or they're IV-E funded. And so those are two terms that you may hear quite regularly. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But because we have the agreement, we are able to work closely with our tribal partners, and Raquel then is able to call Children and Family Services and access our provider network as well in the event that she has a shortage of resources locally. So that is just a kind of dual on where we're at. But what we're going to do to pass along the time today is really walk through some of the questions that you all asked. So you'll be seeing this mic go back and forth and kind of toggled along. We'll see how close we get through the list here of questions that were previously submitted. And then we'll see if we have some time at the end for open-ended questions. So if you have a question, write it down so you don't forget it. And then we'll do our best to get through those. I will ask, just out of confidentiality and courtesy, that we are not asking case-specific questions, and that you keep those isolated to what you may need, and reach out to caseworkers specific on cases. So we're not going to talk about specific kiddos tonight. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first question that was submitted. And it was, what is the difference between zone custody and tribal custody? So who wants to go first, ladies? You want to take it? Sure.
Hello, everybody. So when we talk about what the difference is each of us, the zone and the tribe, we each have our own court system. We have state court system, and for the zones, that's juvenile court that we typically function out of. At times, parents may request for it to be moved to a district court, and that's usually from parental request. So we operate under our juvenile court system.
Hello, everyone. So tribal custody is when the children are domiciled on the reservation, so within the exterior boundaries of the reservation lines. They domicile there, we remove, it goes under tribal court. We are only, I guess, have the jurisdiction order over Native American children. Any non-Native American children we call the zone, and they come and get the kids. We'll hold the kids, but they come and get the kids, and then it goes under their court system, if that makes sense.
And I think oftentimes we've seen, well, and historically, such a good partnership between Three Rivers and Standing Rock, because as we think about our North Dakota map, Sioux County encompasses a large mass. All of Sioux County is Standing Rock Sioux Tribal Reservation. And we'll talk a little bit more tonight too, because I think there's additional challenges and maybe some barriers as it relates to how the state kind of looks in and reflects and partners and tries to help collaborate with Standing Rock because of your jurisdiction lines. Do you want to talk a little bit about how widespread your jurisdictional lines are in between two states? That might help.
So if you guys look on the map, there's the reservations right in North Dakota, but there's also South Dakota. So South Dakota has 9 federal recognized tribes. Standing Rock is the only one that's on both. So the landmass on North Dakota side is on North Dakota, and then we have landmass that's also on the South Dakota side. So we butt up against Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. And we actually call them our sister tribe because we're so close. We're kind of like United States and Canada. It's just that line that divides us. So we on that side of it. So we border both north and south. So I'm dealing with North Dakota jurisdiction, and I'm also dealing with South Dakota jurisdiction. So it can get chaotic because it's 2 different states, not only county and zones, but I'm also dealing with 2 vastly different states.
And that does play a huge part in how they, as workers, are managing those cases. What is this child eligible for? Which office am I supposed to talk to? And so there's been many times that the state office and Raquel's office, we've said, where was the child removed from? North Dakota side or South Dakota side? Well, they're standing on the border. No, you can't. Gotta pick.
Yeah.
So we have to have those conversations at time because it is impacting how the tribal court system is going to view that child. If it's going to be a North Dakota case or a South Dakota case, how eligibility is determined. And that's just all the beginnings. So that's like all that's already happening before a child is placed into a home at times. So keeping that in mind as you're thinking jurisdiction and who's really ultimately in charge, but that's what it is. A court is in charge of the case, and the zone or the tribal office are the catalyst, the liaison to keeping this case going and moving through. So with that being said, a lot of conversation has been brought up in the last month regarding enrollment and enrollment of a child. How do we look at enrollment? Who with caseworkers is responsible to determine enrollment of a child who's Native American, who might appear to be Native American, but we're not sure. And so I'm going to have actually the zone side start with this, Natalie, if you don't mind, because even though both parties have criteria and responsibility, it is very different in how we're looking at enrollment, but similar too. So the question is, we have served Native American children who are placed by the zone. As a foster parent, we did not know which tribe that child was affiliated with. I'm curious if it's appropriate for me to ask that question, or if I should even be asking that question. But then whose responsibility is it to determine enrollment? And so we'll kind of put those two together.
So to answer that question, it's completely okay if somebody's calling, you can ask. I think sometimes maybe people might be hesitant, like, oh, is it rude if I ask? And it's not. When we get a case, and any case, we are obligated to ask, is this a potential ICWA case or not? We can't just look at a child and make that determination, or the name of a child and make that determination. We ask that on all of our cases coming in. And especially when we have placement, foster care placement, children coming in, we'll ask if they are affiliated with a tribe, if the parents are enrolled. Sometimes you'll have one parent from one tribe and another from another tribe. So what we're doing is we're going to be contacting both tribes. So many times I'm working with Standing Rock, but I might also be working with Turtle Mountain. And, we invite both tribes. We include them in the process. A lot of times we're calling tribes saying, mom's identified this is her tribe. Here's the kids' names. Do you know family? Do you know relatives? Do you know, are they connected with the tribe at all? Is there any current orders? We try to have those conversations up front and right away. So at any time, a foster parent should feel comfortable asking if this is a ICWA case or not, or what tribe, if any, if the children are connected to. So, and that is something that caseworkers should be sharing with foster parents. It's an important part of what we do, because as foster parents, you want to try to connect them to their culture and any kind of activities and events going on for the kids too. So please ask.
So Raquel, do you want to talk a little bit about enrollment status and how enrollment is determined? So Natalie talks about how zone case managers are determined, they have to ask the question, and sometimes very freely the answer is given. And there's a lot of information that is shared. There's many other times where that information might be protected. And so do you want to talk with us a little bit about how Standing Rock walks through those questions, how you determine enrollment, and what enrollment looks like at Standing Rock?
Okay, so the enrollment piece, I think, is, so we as workers, we can't enroll in a child once we get the child in, right? We have to determine with our enrollment, is this child enrolled? Yes or no? Yes, great. No, then are the child eligible? The eligibility or the enrollment of a child is specifically the parent. So I can't go enroll your kid into a tribe. I'm not the parent. Only the parent that gets to decide. So the ladies here described mom is from Standing Rock and the dad is from Turtle Mountain or vice versa, right? It's the parent's decision to say what tribe this kid's going to be enrolled. They can be ineligible for both, but you can only be enrolled in one. If you're dual enrollment, which our tribe is not a dual enrollment tribe, you cannot be enrolled with us guys and enrolled in another tribe. And just kind of some information for these guys is that enrollment clerks, they all talk to each other. So they can't sneak around and say I'm enrolled over there, but I'm also enrolled here, because they all talk. If they submitted an application, we'll give an application to mom or dad or whoever and say, can you fill this out? We'll hand it in for them and do that legwork, but filling it out is not our job. So even though we have their kid and they're not enrolled, but say they are ineligible, I'll say, okay, mom, sit down, fill this out. I'll notarize it. I'll take it to the enrollment office. Say dad's over from Spirit Lake, right? They're going to take Spirit Lake's dad, what he is enrolled there. So she's going to call their enrollment office and say, hey, we got a dad here, date of birth, look him up in a system. Well, he's enrolled at such and such blood quantum, right? So they take half of him and half of mom, and this is what the child is. So if they're eligible, that's fine. They can be eligible, just like with ICWA. ICWA applies even if the child's eligible. If they're not eligible, then that makes me have to think, if they're not eligible in my tribe, what tribe are they enrolled? Because again, we have intermarrying of different tribes, right? Standing Rock, and I can only speak for us guys, we don't take blood from another tribe. So we cannot take blood from MHA. We cannot take blood from Turtle Mountain. We can't take blood from a Montana tribe or Idaho tribe, only Sioux blood. So any Sioux tribe, we're going to take that blood. So I'll use me as an example. My youngest daughter, we were just talking about her. Her dad has descendancy in Fort Peck Sioux tribe. It's a Sioux tribe in Montana. I'm enrolled in Standing Rock. So we had to decide what tribe we were going to enroll her in. She's eligible just based off me alone, because I'm almost full blood. I can enroll her just me. But he has blood in Montana, but he also has blood in Standing Rock. His mom is from there, but dad is from Fort Peck. So we went to that tribe and we asked permission, her dad's not enrolled over there. He's enrolled in Standing Rock, but his lineage is over there. Each tribe is different. We don't take lineage. We just take strictly blood. So we went over there, met with them, and said, can we enroll her here? Because great grandpa on down on his side of the family are all enrolled over there. So their enrollment different than us guys. They said, yes, you can. So we fill out the application, did everything. She is now enrolled there, even though dad's not enrolled there. So the enrollment piece is very different for each tribe. And I can only speak for Standing Rock, but I know that most Sioux tribes in South Dakota and Spirit Lake, we will take each other's blood because it's Sioux. We're trying to keep it as pure as possible, if you will. I don't know how the other tribes work. So if I have a mom here and dad in Turtle Mountain and dad says I want him enrolled in there, then that's up between those two to decide that. I'm not going to make that decision, but I'll just help you with the application of it. The child's not eligible. So we do have a few cases where mom's an eighth, right? For Standing Rock Sioux blood, you have to be half, or you have to be a fourth or more. So that means mom has to be half or more. and they take half of her and half of dad. If the child comes up an eighth, the child's not eligible for enrollment. That same goes with ICWA too, for our tribe anyway. Different tribes are different, like Oglala, I know them, they do lineage. They're not blood quantum. So as long as you have a lineage grant to show that you have, relatives in that tribe, they'll enroll you. I don't know about the other tribes. I think a lot of them are blood quantum based, and we're blood quantum based, but not all tribes are. Again, you have to go to whatever tribe that they're from to determine the eligibility part of that. So, if child is a eighth or less, they're not eligible. So I'm going to sit there and look at either mom or dad, whoever's not enrolled in our tribe, to say, let's go to that tribe and say, is a child eligible in their tribe? If so, then guess what? I'm going to have them get me an application to enroll that child there. And this kind of was a sticking point as far as enrollment goes, because I'm beginning to start questioning a little bit more on my end, because I do have some cases where the kid is not eligible in our tribe, is not eligible in any tribe, like ever. So I have to question myself of, do we even have jurisdiction over this kid then? Because what our code said is any Native American child. Well, then you have to look up definition of what is a Native American child. Are they eligible and enrolled? Well, what if that answer is no on both? So then I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, so now I'm gonna have to get legal involved here, because I don't know the answer to that. I just know that it is what it is, and I have these kids. Not to say that we're just gonna give back or anything. It's just that piece of jurisdiction. Did we even have jurisdiction to remove? There is one that we did not have jurisdiction, like completely. So I'm just like, what do I do? So that family member came up and got the child, and we just got relieved because we didn't really have jurisdiction. Child wasn't even raised on the reservation or even raised on Standing Rock. So it's like, okay, how did we get this? So that was prior to me coming on board. So just a backstory for me, and Kelsey and Natalie both noticed, I was the ICWA director for Standing Rock, worked with Natalie a lot. And then I went over to the other house of CPS and was a director there. I left in 2018. And I worked for the county, I worked for nonprofits and for the federal government. And then the position opened again. So I was asked to apply, I applied, and here I am again. So just kind of been the whole gamut of this and that. And I worked with Kelsey and I worked with Natalie on various different things. So when I came on board in 2022, I had to look through all of our cases to find out the ins and outs of each one. And this is where I'm finding out now that child is not eligible. So I'm trying to do more digging of getting family histories and seeing all that lineage and where do they belong and all that stuff to determine, did we have jurisdiction to remove? So we did bring that up as far as like jurisdictional wise. I don't think it was being done that time span that I was gone. So I was gone for about 5 years, 4 or 5 years. And now coming back, I'm thinking, I don't think anybody was questioning that piece of it. To even determine whether we had jurisdiction over a child or not. So now I'm on the back end trying to look at it and find out, I don't think we have jurisdiction. So when a tribe does not have a jurisdiction over, and that's just like, let's say a non-native child on a reservation, we got called out, and we went to the scene and we find out this non-native child, we would be calling Three Rivers or be calling another county. Same with on South Dakota side, it's the same way. If we got called out and these kids were non-native, I would definitely take the kid out of harm's way, hold a child and get a hold of whatever county that needs to come and get those kids. So a lot of that has to do with, an enrollment. The enrollment piece has a little bit of it, but I don't want to have that as an overarching deciding factor in whether we remove, not remove, give it to county or not give it in county. That's a small snippet of it.
And thank you, Raquel, for bringing up your history with ICWA, because I think many of us who are in this area and your Region 7 provider association, you're very familiar with serving children who are Native American and may or may not be eligible or enrollable, basically because of our geography. We have a large number of Native American families who might be residing in Bismarck and or the local or regional area. And so either Burley or Three Rivers may have children on their caseload. And so ultimately the goal is, it doesn't matter who the custodian is, but that worker who's assigned to that case They have a job to do. And one of those tasks is to determine if this child is ICWA eligible. Now, for Raquel's side of the fence, ICWA does not apply to children who are under the custody of a tribal nation. ICWA does not apply. It will apply to children who are under the custody of the state. And so through the zone. So there's the whole like layer of, does it apply? Does it not apply? And that's why ICWA directors who are stationed in all of the tribes across North Dakota are such a good liaison to the zone caseworkers, because they need to have someone they can call to help navigate the ICWA law and make sure that they're following state law and following the federal guidance regarding ICWA. So long story short, enrollment is determined as soon as possible. Sometimes it takes a little while because, to Raquel's example, every tribal nation has different enrollment standards. So eligibility into one tribe is going to look different than another tribe. So and I just want to credit you, Raquel, for bringing up, looking at cases, because I think as we look back to cases that have not achieved permanency, cases that have been in our public child welfare system, and this is, a testament to Three Rivers too, really applying safety framework and looking at the level of intrusion that the public agency has on the life of that child and that family, and really looking at it through a new lens. And so that's helpful. I think it helps us guide, but it doesn't always, help our heart in knowing what the end outcome is for what some of these cases are. So let's talk a little bit about communication and what the role of our workers are, what our expectation as leaders in our agencies are for workers who know there's going to be a change in the case, and what they should be doing in working with you as the service providers, as the foster care provider. So things that we might tell our staff in getting ahead of what might feel like conflict and case planning. So who wants to go first? Okay.
What's the question? No. So again, looking at when we have a child that comes in and we are thinking, okay, is this an ICWA case? We're asking the questions. There is a form that gets sent out to enrollment offices, and we try to put as much information on there as we can so we can start the process right away. Through the state part, we look at within the first 30 days, we're having a child and family team meeting. And I think many of you, if you've been fostering for a while, you know what those meetings are. We do invite our foster parents and anyone else that's identified as a part of the team. And so it's our job to communicate with you all, let you know what's going on the case. What I hear sometimes is, and you're going to have different zones handle it in different ways. I think it just kind of depends on the culture of that zone and how they handle things. But when we're at a child and family team meeting, that's where we're talking about progress. That's how we're talking about barriers. That's where we're talking about what's going well, what's not going well. So we always want to have you all as being part of those meetings, participating in court hearings. You have a voice. You should be notified of hearings. You can either write a letter for the court or you can come to the court. There's no guarantee that you will be allowed to sit in the court hearing. Usually that's left up to the judge and what the parents say about wanting others in the courtroom. But there's a way for you to be heard, and you just need to communicate that with your case manager.
Okay, so going back to when I came back in 2022, I went through a lot of the cases, sitting down, saying, okay, what happened? Why did the kid come into care? Where are we at in the case? Because we had a lot of cases. We had a lot of individuals under care. That number has now since cut in half just because I'm pushing for permanency, right? Because I think that I think that all of our children deserve permanency. They deserve permanency, and that's my biggest fight right now. That I have a fight in front of me, and it's called tribal council. So they don't always see what we do on a daily basis. I've invited them many times to say these kids deserve permanency. So when I'm looking at a case where this kid's been in care for 10 years, that's too long. So I'm saying, what are we doing and how do we get this kid to be permanently in a forever home? Whatever home that looks, whether that's relative, parent, or foster, I don't even care. They're being loved in this home. How do I keep the kid there? So that's what I was looking at. And I'm just like, there's way too many kids in care for way too long. So that was my task as a director to find out, what are we doing? Where are we at? How are we doing things? Again, I don't know who the directors were before me, but I can't answer for why they did what they did. I just can just say I came in on the end of it when I did to say, okay, now we need to change things different because I don't like what I'm seeing. My task is to go to my workers to say, where are we at? Why are we doing what we're doing? And that's what I do. And so we meet every week. Every Monday, we go over every single one of these individual kids, every single one of them. And if that takes me into the afternoon, guess what? It takes me in the afternoon. And it has a couple of times, but as long as I know every single thing, what's going on, whether they're sibling groups, whether they're individual, and where are we at permanency wise. I tell my workers, are we at that stage of, if they're terminated already and I'm saying, okay, adoption, is Kelsey ready to adopt? Oh, I don't know, I didn't talk to her. Well, get with Kelsey and ask her, sit down with her when you go do your face-to-face and ask, are you wanting to adopt this child? Yes, no. If it's yes, okay. So then we start that process going down the road. If it's no, then if it's not no, then now I'm gonna have to reach out to find out a forever home and looking for an adoptive home. So as far as like the communicating as to why we're moving the kids, like Natalie was saying, North Dakota side, you guys have the team meetings, right? You guys have that. South Dakota kids, they have it, but it's not called what you guys call it. And I don't think since I've been back, I don't think I've been to one of those. So I know that they have them because they're required to, obviously, but we're not a part of those. And I don't know why.
And so knowing that there with the South Dakota cases, what I know from administrative office is that the South Dakota state follows the federal requirement of a 6-month rule, and they call them administrative reviews. So they don't call them child and family team meetings like we do in North Dakota. And North Dakota, go big, go home. We require quarterly. So if you do not meet the quarterly time frame of every 3 months having a case visit about this child, you are out of compliance. And now we're telling zones and tribal offices and DJS, we're sending like reports saying you're not meeting it on a quarterly, you're not meeting it on a quarterly, you're not meeting it on a quarterly. And so we're watching that and monitoring it. And what it's doing is pushing the needle. Agencies are doing better and they're making sure these meetings happen and they're inviting the people to come. So South Dakota rules are different. So to Raquel's point, so let's talk a little bit about communicating with your providers when changes are going to happen and really the why. I think that's helpful.
So recently, up until recently anyway, like I was saying, and I hate to even put this out there, but I have to do a lot of cleanup, right? And I'm still doing cleanup. Some of the stuff kind of got better, just changing the way we're doing things in the communication. But currently, right now, we are so short-staffed. We were always talking to the ladies about how short-staffed everybody is, law enforcement included. I know we had a big old meeting down at the casino with state, federal, everybody came law enforcement wise. We're short law enforcement, just plain and simple everywhere, right? So just talking with Natalie, and they have shortages, we have shortages, everywhere has shortages of workers. And I don't know if it's just this field or what, but I should have 7 case managers, right? Over both states. I have 2. So when I came on board, we had 305 kids, individual kids, not cases, kids. I'm down to 160. But within that time frame, I'm losing them. So I only have 2, and that's to manage both sides of the reservation. I have 2 investigators who are also doing case management. So that's even harder because not only are we moving, but then now we're having to case manage, and then we're all terminating. Now we're adopting. So we're doing all of it when they're actually only supposed to be doing 1 job. I am doing 3 jobs. On top of that, I'm kind of doing mini investigations and mini receptions and mini this and mini that. So I'm the office manager, licensor, director, receptionist, sometimes go out on a case or 2 doing. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, right? Thursday, Friday, I'm going to Denver to do a face-to-face. I'm eventually going to be going to Arizona to do face-to-face because that's where some of the relatives are. So when we talk about where our kids are at, are these 2 cases that I'm doing, dad or mom is from Standing Rock, but the other parents from another tribe. So like the Arizona one, we have to go down there. So I'm doing it because I have some time in my busy schedule to say I'll go do that because I know you guys are all busy. So total 4 who are doing case management. So I don't have the luxury of sitting down with you guys and saying, okay, this is what's going on. Although I want to, I think that's ideal. I think it would be better for you guys to understand that. And it's not that we're trying to keep you guys out of it. It's just, we don't have the time. We just don't have the time. We do have quarterlies with Leah Honeyman and those guys to go over the 4E cases, you know, to make sure our face-to-face and our court orders are happening the way they happen. But as far as the team meetings, we don't. And South Dakota just is, I don't know about South Dakota. I'm just like, I'm not even gonna go down that road, but so that's the reason why sometimes communicating whether these kids are gonna get moved or not is the way it is with us guys. Sometimes it's just, we go to court and saying, okay, we need a kid to stay under because mom is blah, 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 blah. And the judge, again, it's even with state, it's up to the judge. We can advocate all we want, but if the judge says, I like what I see, I want to give kids back, guess what? Kids are going to go back. Even though we can sit there and say that, well, she's completed everything, but we kind of want to do the trial and put them in a home a little bit just to get them acclimated back with mom and dad. She can say, no, done deal, order, you guys are relieved. And it's like, ee. So now we're in the back end trying to scramble. And I think that talking with my staff, I think they're putting us guys in a bad place because it's not only do we have to deal with the foster parent and explain, I'm sorry, this is what happened, this is what we got to do, to just having to explain to mom or dad or whatever the case is. So sometimes that puts us in a hard place to be. And I just, as a director, I just have to deal with what is, despite the fact that I maybe sometimes don't like the way the case is coming out. But there's other things that are coming my way that I have to just deal with what is.
And I think Raquel, I suppose some days you go to work, and that's why I joked with her. I said, put a plug in if you know anyone at Standing Rock who wants to be a receptionist. She's opened up the job 3 times and has not successfully filled it. So anyway, she could use someone to answer her phones. But that being said, I think Raquel, since coming back to Standing Rock in 2022, has done a good job of helping to put out fires, because oftentimes that's what happens when you're the leader. You get all of the burning barrels and you then are asked to help figure out and finalize. And Natalie, as a supervisor too at Three Rivers, those elevate to you because your workers need help. And I think ultimately in all of the work that we do and all of the jobs that you have as day to day, but also as a service provider, I think conflict is hard. I mean, who wakes up in the morning and says, I can't wait to have conflict. I can't wait to have a conversation that's going to grind somebody's gears. Attorneys. Yeah. Some people are trained for that. Others, I think in this field of child welfare, it's all good intentioned. And I think conflict can really put a damper on relationships and how we manage that conflict. So I know both agencies have done such a good job of helping their staff come up with training opportunities or, maybe mentoring with another more experienced workforce member to help get through that conflict, because those conversations are not easy. Even if emails go out in advance, like I'm coming, or a text message is sent or not. And so we want to get ahead of that. And I think the takeaway from myself with licensing and then the 2 agencies is you can never communicate enough. And if we can help train our staff to just be transparent and get ahead of it, that ultimately is the goal. So thank you for that on the why. Let's talk a little bit. You addressed your workers. You talked about child and family team meetings. I think this one is kind of interesting. So I want to have you all talk about it. You've touched on it just a tish. So we'll go to number 5. So when enrollment is in question, and we can tell that has happened, enrollment's in question with Standing Rock and Tribal Court. Can the custody be transferred to the state so that the case can have some back-end planning before the child is reunified with the relative or the parent. So talk to me about when and why and how a case can be transferred. So maybe Natalie, your experience with, it's pretty rare.
Yes, and I would say the situation is pretty rare. We do have those situations where, like Raquel was saying, if something's happening on the reservation and they get out there and they find out it's not a Native American family situation, they'll contact us and we'll do our best to respond and get out on the situation. If a situation comes up where in our court, if it is an ICWA case, at any point, a party involved can petition to have the case transferred, the jurisdiction transferred. Oftentimes, the tribes do file, and I'm going to get my language right. They file for, no, what's the, where you're to intervene. They transfer to intervene, and that means they're going to stay involved. They're going to oversee the case. They're going to be involved in the decision-making process. And it's our job then to keep them in the loop and keep them updated on everything. Once in a while, there are affidavits or petitions filed to have the transfer of jurisdiction, which would mean it would leave the custody of the state and go to the tribe. A parent can apply for that, or they can make that request. And typically it's either the parent or maybe the ICWA director that would make the request for the case to be transferred. The state could have a good cause reason as to why it shouldn't be or why we don't agree with it. But again, that's something that rarely happens. A parent under ICWA can veto and say, we don't want the case to go to the tribe or for them to take over the case. But ultimately, the tribe would still be involved in that situation. And then once termination would happen, it would be back on with both of us kind of in the same situation, making decisions together on the case. I'm trying to think of a situation, and I don't know if I have one where we have actually had a transfer from the reservation to the state that could happen going forward. And Raquel would probably call me and say, we have a placement, but what we're learning is the child is not enrollable. You know, they've gone through that process to see if the child qualifies for services there, which is some kind of a newer, you guys are trying to figure some of that out. So we would have a conversation about that, because what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at bottom line is safety for the child or the children. And so I think that might be some new territory that we're going to be coming up on. But typically, and like I said, under ICWA cases, they can be transferred to the tribe. Oftentimes the tribe might not look at a transfer, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think part of it is the workforce too. There's, you know, a lot of the different tribes we work with in North Dakota they need more staff. They need more people working the cases, and they could definitely, you know, provide better services to the families. But so those are some situations that we would look at, and we would look at it coming into.
Raquel, do you have anything from the tribal custody side transferring to the state? Anything else to add on that?
So I work with Natalie on a lot of when I was the ICWA director. So sometimes the tribe doesn't want to, there's times when I didn't want to transfer. Parents did, they have the right to file, their attorney can file. So typically when it happens, when they file, we have to move two courts. We move tribal court first because they have to accept the jurisdiction first. I've been to those court hearings when I'm saying I don't want to transfer and the various reasons why I don't. And then they say their piece. Most of the time, our judge, the same judge who's been there for decades, will side with my side and say, okay, I'm not going to accept jurisdiction. So the case stays where it's at. There's other times when I want to transfer and the parent don't want to transfer. But I'll file anyway, move our court, go to the court. But on a tribal side, parent can say, I don't want to transfer, but it actually is up to the judge. If she says, no, I'm still going to transfer and I'm still going to accept jurisdiction, then it's still going to go. It's when they go to state court, when they veto it and they don't want it. So it stays in state court. But on the flip side of that, we've never had a case where we move it from tribal court to state court, except we have one now. Yeah. New territory. So I'm, in my mind, I'm thinking, how does this even work? So getting a hold of our legal, our courts and our people to find out, how does this even look? Because we'd never done that before. In this particular case, got two kiddos, mom's not enough. She's enrolled, but her kids are not enough. The father is deceased, and not enough. And so they wanted us to get a DNA on dad and say, does dad have a blood brother or sister that they can do a DNA on? He didn't have any. So it's like, there's no way of us guys knowing whether these kids are going to be eligible. So I said, what do I do with this case? Unfortunately, this mother is in prison. I don't know when she'll ever get out. So it's like, there is no reunification. So what do I still do with this case? So working with Bismarck, worker, she's the one who reached out to me and said, hey, we have a case. If you guys want to transfer it, we'll take it. I was like, wow, that's interesting. I've never done that before, but I said, we can try. So I did. I tried, went to the court. I went to actually see the judge to say, this is the case, this situation. What do we do? She said, just put it in review to be dismissed. I'm like, oh, that easy? And she's like, yeah. So I'm like, okay. So then I get with Burleigh County and I'm like, so this is what our judge said. What do you guys see on your end? And they're like, we just need you guys to dismiss it. I was like, that easy. So it's never been done. I've never done that before. So I'm like, no. So I'm just like, really? Yeah. So, well, it just so happens it's Burleigh County because that's where the kiddos are placed. And she wants permanency and she wants to adopt. But it's like, so this was another thing is that when we adopt out to non-natives, it has to go through tribal council. They have to give their seal and it got to be a resolution and all that. But of lately, we have new council. We have a few new ones on there, and I have a lot of cases that need to be, like I was saying, permanency, right? They've been terminated for a couple of years now, and I want to permanently put them somewhere. Like these people are wanting to take them forever, and that's great. I love it. I'm just trying to push that forward. So when I go to council, everyone goes through the line and they do their spill, but then they say, okay, everyone leave but you guys, meaning us. So we sit there and then we have all these questions coming up. And what about this? And what about that? And then trying to field all those questions. So in this particular case, I don't have to go to council for that. So it's like, okay, how do I do that? So my worker put in a review to get dismissed so that once they get the order, they can transfer it. The kids are already up there in Burleigh County and home and all that. And I'm just like, I've never had to do that before. And this would be probably by far the first one ever that we've transferred. We've transferred from state tribe to tribe, don't get me wrong, because there's cases right now that we have where the kid's not enrolled with us, but enrolled in another tribe. So that kid gonna adopt, we go to the committee, which is called the Health Education, HEW committee. And we say, this is the scenario, this is the case, this is where we're at. We want a motion to adopt, right? And they do their motion to adopt. Well, when we came to forth with them for these two kiddos that's the first thing you ask them, are they enrolled? Yeah, or no, or they are, but not in our tribe. So they're like, go back to that tribe and get permission. It's like, okay. So this one particular one, 2 years now, we've been trying to get a hold of the other tribe to say, can we adopt out your enrolled member? 2 years, and I finally got the letter, and then I go, we go in front of HW again and say, hey, we finally got the letter saying, yeah, you can adopt out. I'm like, okay. And we get there and they're like, we did some research. We had our attorneys look into it, and we find out that we cannot adopt out a citizen that's not from our tribe. It's like, you gotta be kidding me, right? Like 2 years it took just to get the letter to say, yeah, you guys can adopt them out. Like the tribe's saying you can adopt them out. And then our tribe now is saying, we cannot, just like on the other, if we were to switch it, we wouldn't want another tribe to adopt out our kid. It's enrolled in our tribe. I get that, but it's like, okay, now what? Now we're still at this juncture of adoption. So now what the workers are doing now is working with that tribe, their CPS, and saying, we'll transfer it back, which our judge has transferred back and forth tribe to tribe, just never tribe to state. So we've done that before. So now we're going to have to transfer those cases back to that tribe, but we're advocating that the kids stay where they're at. because I said it's not fair for them just to up and go to another home that they don't know. They've been in this home for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever. So that's on our end of having to advocate for that and really working with that other tribal CPS to say, can we leave the kids where they're at? They're permanently need to be there. So yeah.
I'm feeling maybe like the target is moving, you know, and I think sometimes new leadership that happens when you have a new lens. And then sometimes rules just sort of get, not changed for better or good, but maybe uncovered, that things that haven't been done in the past start to be done. And so kind of having to roll with those motions. So let's talk a little bit about those back end services. So when we know that a child may transition back to their parent and or a relative, can we share from both parties what can a foster care provider do to better support that transition on the back end? Is there any advice that either party would have? If I'm the foster care provider and I've had a relationship with these kids, I want to help mom, I want to be a support, what would you encourage me to do as the custodial agent?
You know, on our end, we want the foster parents involved as a support to parents, as a mentor to parents. And a lot of times it's what is the foster parent comfortable with? You know, I've had foster parents, yeah, we'll do the visit in our house, you know, just have them come over, we'll do it here. And then I have other foster parents that are like not comfortable with that because maybe they have smaller children or they're not sure of the situation. And there's no right or wrong, but it's being involved and being an active member on the case. If we're starting the visit, you know, if we're doing visits and we start with supervised and then we go to unsupervised or the home, when we're at a point where mom or dad may be looking at more visits, if they're on the weekends, you know, if that's something the foster parents can say, yeah, I'll drop the child off at this time and, you know, pick them up at this time. You're building a relationship with that parent and you're making a connection with them. We've had kids recently go home where, the foster care providers have done respite for the kids because parents needed a break or they were going through a tough time. They were getting overwhelmed. So we'll reach out and they'll do some daycare or they'll call and say, you know, if you need a break, we're willing to take the kids for the weekend. That happens, I think, frequently in certain situations. We had a recent placement that happened where the mother reached out to the foster parents because she had relapsed and she was not in a good place and not doing well. She reached out to the foster parents. They said, absolutely, we'll take the kids. And they had them for a couple weeks and then things started getting a little bit more difficult. So then they had to get us involved and look at a custody change, and not because the parent wasn't doing what they needed to do, but because of the financial aspect of it with they needed daycare. They couldn't patch things together anymore. Mom was doing what she needed to do, but they just needed more help and more support. And so we were able to get involved in that situation. So ultimately it's up to the parents and how comfortable the parents feel with you and allowing that support and allowing that connection. But just the more you are involved with the parents, what I have seen is, you know, parents, especially young parents, single parents, or parents that have struggled with mental health or addiction or different things, they need as many people as they can to help and to support and maybe just to give them a weekend so they can sleep in, right? You know, sleep until 10 o'clock. I like those days, and I didn't, when I had little kids, it was like, oh, they're up so early, you know? But just to be that support. And the more involved you are with the parents during the case, I think the better back end it's going to be too.
Raquel, how about from your perspective?
Okay, so ideally that's probably what we want. And I think if I'm fully staffed, that would happen. It just, like you're saying, putting out the fires, right? And then it's not something that I don't want. I do want that. Our parents, again, it comes down to whether they want to still have you guys involved or not. We have some cases where the parents are involved with the foster parent already. They're already in foster care and they kind of have that open communication. Even afterwards, even like with open adoptions, that foster parent is still having mom or dad or whoever come into their life, right? Ideally for us guys, it would be to have that parent have the support they want, but at the end of the day, I'm going to have them choose. So we had a recent one that she finally got her kid back. And I asked, do you want their number? Do you want, and sometimes the foster parents will say, can I give them my number? Can I give them this, that, the other, in case they have questions? Because if you think about it, for our cases, I can only speak for ours. If I don't have my kid for 3, 4, 5 years, and I'm having very sparingly visitation with my child, that's going to be, I'm going to have to acclimate to my own child. My child's going to have to acclimate to me because they had another caretaker that entire time. So what I've been having my workers do is even do Zoom visits just to see if the child can see mom and know that that's mom and see how that's going. If it's going great, we have one right now that the Zooms are going great. So I think we're going to do about up to 4. We're on the second one now just to see, to make sure that child is kind of taking to mom. And then we're going to do a physical visitation with my worker. She's going to take the kid up there with mom and have a day or whatever to see how that's going. She's completed, but we're doing trial identification. And I like to do that because some of our kids have been in care way too long and really don't have that good connection with mom, although they know probably the older ones are going to know mom. But the younger ones I'm more worried about, like, the newborns into the 1-year-olds that got removed. I don't know if that's my mom, so things like that. And it's case by case basis, but I'm okay with the foster parents letting mom know I'm here as a resource. What I have also seen, which I really, really like, is some of the foster parents will say, here's a list of things, like this is what child likes, this is what they don't like, they like, just various things about the child. And then later on when we meet with mom again, like, how's everything going? And like, oh, this really helped, because again, for us guys, our kids are in care for so long that I think that bonding part, they bonded and then disconnect and then trying to bond again. So I think just a little tiny sheet to say, this is what he likes or she likes, or this is what they like to eat, is helpful for the parent. Some parents don't mind that the foster parents are involved, and some parents, like Natalie says, don't want it. They're just like, give my kid and I'm on my way. So I think at the end of the day, even though despite all the resources we try to put in place and then you guys coming into play, sometimes the parents just say, just give me my kid and I'll be on my way type stuff, so it depends.
And I think we can all attest to the fact of kind of being tired of the system. So when we get to the place where reunification may happen or the child is back with a relative and just needing sort of that little temporary time. But what I do like, and I know both parties had alluded to this, is just offering that I'm here when the time is right, or if they want my number, they can reach out to me. Like, just know that's on the table. Then that's not always going to be the case. I mean, as providers, some of you, you have a house full and you are busy and you're running and gunning already. So you're like, okay, this case is moving along. That's good. And I'm happy and they're happy and yay. But if it's a quick check-in, like, that's fine. But we've had providers we range, and some of you are in this room where you have like turned your house upside down to make sure you were available for that family member so that they can feel supported on the back end. And so we just appreciate that. Absolutely not an expectation, but is really a helpful thing on the back end. And I'm going to just answer this question quickly because it does go through large sibling groups. And so when large sibling groups are placed in homes, the question was, how do you keep them together? Or how do you connect them? If Natalie has, 4 of the siblings and Raquel has 4 of the siblings, what do we do in those circumstances as providers to just ensure that continuity? And so just in our conversations and what I've seen and what many of you have shared with us over the years is really just having that nice bond with your case manager of that case, which most of the time large sibling groups have one case manager because it kind of helps keep things organized. But if they're big, and we've had big units, so we've had 11 kids in a family, and so they have to break that up and have more than one worker. So when that happens, FaceTime calling between providers, letters, having visits, maybe doing respite if that's necessary to like offload and have some relief care are just things you can offer the sibling provider to be able to maintain some of that. Raquel, you alluded to some of the larger challenges that Standing Rock is facing right now, and you and I had visited a little bit about wanting to come up with a kind of education plan. And thank you. This is 101. This is the very beginning, scratching the surface of an education plan for just trying to help with some of the movement in a direction that providers are craving. And what I learned from this and what I think we've known and what Raquel has known and even what Three Rivers is aware of is that, providers aren't asking for much. You're wanting to just have an email back. You're wanting to have a phone call. You're just asking to be kept in the loop and really feeling like there's got to be ways we can help bolster that communication and help support what those endeavors are. So Standing Rock and Children and Family Services is going to continue to work on strategies on how we can help with that and keep it going. Is there any other big challenges that you want to, besides workforce, that you want to share?
So obviously the workforce is the number one thing right now because I don't have enough workers. But number two is just trying to get permanency. So permanency to me is either going back to relative, going back with mom or dad because they completed whatever, or adoption, right? So right now what I'm seeing and what I'm facing right now is leadership. We had a big meeting on March 4th in front of our work, just my workers, me and my workers in front of leadership, because when I'm talking about permanency and talking about these kids need a permanent home, right? I'm getting pushback. And not to say that I never got pushback. I think I have. It's just I'm getting more of these questions about relatives. If a kid's been in care for 5 years, that's the first thing that we do when we remove is relatives. That's the ultimate first thing we do. At the time of removal, and I have these kids, I'm asking mom, who do you want your kids to be placed with? That's the first thing that we're asking. If we can't get that, if we can't ask at the time of removal, then I'm waiting until the next day when I'm going to jail and saying, okay, mom, we got your kids. Who do you want these kids placed with? What relatives? Give me a list of names. And then we start going down that list of names. My worker then turns around and then she'll get a family history from enrollment to say who's all the relatives, both mom and dad, because that's what we have to do. The pushback on my end on council, what I'm having right now is they want us to do more research on relatives. And I'm saying we've done enough. We've done that already. We've done that piece. Termination has happened. The act of efforts is done. I'm done now. So I need to put these kids permanently in a place. So right now we went through March 6th, we went in front of Tribe Council to adopt out 4 kiddos. They're in 2 different homes, like we're talking about that these 2 foster homes, are friends, became friends because they have siblings, right? 2 on this side and 2 on this side. So we went to tribal council and again, we went through the whole spill. Everyone leaves and we're in there and then they're asking us more questions. So what they're wanting, so I said, this is my I guess my answer to that was, April should be the month that I'm going in front of council to get the whole council to approve of this adoption. I said, I'll skip it and give my worker time to, again, reach out for relatives. That I have never had to do that before. In past times, it just kind of goes along because again, they've been in care for too long. So we are going down the road again with the same, relatives and searches and everywhere we turn, it's no, I don't want them. I can't have them. Whatever the excuse is. So now we're having to go back and saying, we've done all that part. We've done above and beyond that part. I want permanency. I'm telling them I want permanency because we are the voice of the children and where they're at we need to keep them there. So new council that came in, they're the ones who are kind of give the older ones that have been there for, second, third termer, they've been through this gamut, if you want to call it that. It's the new ones that came in that are now, having to have questions about this, that, and the other. So that's the challenge. That when we talk about challenges, that's where I'm at right now. Besides everything else, putting out fires, I can do that. This is where I'm trying to get over this hurdle of permanency. And they deserve a permanent home, plain and simple. That's all I'm saying to my council is they deserve permanency, wherever that may look like. They need permanency. They don't deserve to be in care all their life. So.
Thank you, Raquel, for that. And I know that we're getting close on time, and I just want to put one plug in regarding payment. We talked a little bit earlier. There were some questions about how do I know if this child is eligible for Title IV and being paid by the state versus a 638 eligibility being paid for by the tribe. And so that's the difference. The eligibility matters. And in Raquel's defense, the same way that it would be for Three Rivers, they don't know the day that that child is removed. because it takes a little time for that paperwork to get filled out. It's all about income and assets of the parent at the time of removal. So they're getting that information. It might take, 10, 12 days before they have everything they need from mom and or dad or home of removal before they turn it into our office at Children and Family Services. And then our eligibility crew, they go, top to bottom, looking at court orders, looking at the paperwork that was submitted by the worker, signed by the parent. And, if the parent can't sign because they're in jail or whatever it might be, they can have it signed by the case manager because they've been given permission. But ultimately, that eligibility determination sets the stage for how payment is going to happen. And so once that child is determined for eligible, those payments will come every month from CFS. It's based on the dates that the child is in that provider home. In the event that we don't know the child's moved, we'll still pay you until we know the child's moved, and then you have to pay me back. So how many of you have had an overpayment and you've had to pay the state back because the child is there for what we thought was 12 more days and we paid you for it? So those kinds of things happen. For the 638 or the South Dakota cases, that is all managed through the tribal office. So I don't know if you have any high level tips, Raquel, that you would think are helpful, but ultimately, if someone is not getting reimbursed, what should they do?
So when I came on board, we didn't have like a central, like the state has central emails, right? So I created central emails. We have one for investigations. You send it there. I created one for eligibility, so the state eligibility people can send it to that one particular email, right? So it's not several people. And I created one for licensing. Any to do with licensing, when we're licensed, you email that. South Dakota, if they're 4E and they're placed in North Dakota, there's the ICPC piece of it, right? So South Dakota is going to pay you guys. If the child is 638, then we're going to pay you guys. And that's where, when we do our little staffing every Monday morning, we'll say, has this kid moved? So if the kid is in your home and a kid moved from you to you, I need to know that. And we have forms that the worker has to fill out to say they move from you to you on these dates. So I count the dates and I go by the certain rates and then I pay you. So I go down all the list of saying who's all the 638 and paid placements. And then I go from there. And if they, just like you guys need a SFN 45, I need that placement saying they moved from Natalie to Kelsey on this particular day. Every month at the end of the month, I tally all that up to find out where the kid is, who am I paying. Sometimes I'm paying to both of you because they moved in the middle of the month. But I need to know that, and I get on my workers because I need to know that, because I end up just paying another foster parent that's a 4E kiddo, but due to court order reasons, I didn't get it enough. State didn't pay. It was a South Dakota case. So then I'll pick that up and I eventually get reimbursed. But it's, again, communication. Again, we have centralized emails just like the state does. I had to create all that because, again, we have various people, turnover rates high, and there wasn't no central person to be doing that.
I think let's go ahead and take one question online, Leslie. So if there's one that you've looked at that you
Yeah.
think is good.
So there is a question. A family adopted a child that was not enrolled, and they are wondering if they can now enroll that child so that they would be eligible for all of the benefits that might be available. This is specific to Standing Rock.
Usually prior to adoption, we would have already tried to get that child enrolled. That's one of the things that we go through to find out, are they eligible? Yes, they are. Are they enrolled yet? No, they're not. So we do that legwork on our end before we even do the adoption piece, because that's one of the questions that we're going to get asked when we go in front of leadership. Are they enrolled? We can say, no, they're eligible. We'll get them enrolled first before we go down that road. So that child should already been enrolled if it was eligible for enrollment.
So in that case, Raquel, would it be in the best interest if that, for this particular time, it was probably when you weren't there. So let's say they're not enrolled, could they reach out to the enrollment office and just ask that question? So encourage that provider to reach out to the Standing Rock enrollment office and explain the circumstance.
Maybe there's a piggyback question that is sort of related to this. If a parent says a child is enrolled with a particular tribe, that's always validated, right?
We would already know that
Okay.
way ahead of time. Yeah, because we pull that anyway, because it's something that we need to have in the file as part of our contract with the government that we have to have. If they're enrolled, we need that in the file.
Yeah, so
Yeah, if kids are enrolled, we get their enrollment papers, their enrollment number. We make sure that we have a copy of it on hand or in our office.
And that helps with the state cases too, to validate that this child is ICWA eligible, and then they have to be held at different standards in the court. So, good. Should we take one more?
There are
Sir-
no more online, but if there are questions in the room, I will run a mic to you.
I was wondering, you guys talked a little bit about, if a child's in a foster home, say like for 5 years, and they bond with that family, it's a native child, bond with this white family. And so the time comes when if a relative wants to take over, well, then what takes precedent? The bond, you guys talked about this, what this child wants. So does that take precedent over equal law, or how does that work?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I guess that depends on whether they're a tribal case or state case.
I would say the child in state custody, whatnot.
That's a good question, and that is a tough one. Over the years, and that's why I always say it's so important to try to find relatives in the beginning, and we try to find relatives throughout. We're on our workers every month, every couple months, make sure you're calling a relative or make sure you're doing some different search tools that we have to try to find relatives. In the past, I had a case where the child had lived with a foster family for 1.5 years. We knew parental rights was going to happen. The parents just weren't involved. And then all of a sudden that aunt that I talked to the first couple weeks of placement came out of the woodwork and said, well, now that I know it's going to go to adoption, I want to adopt the child. And it was very difficult for the foster family. And as the case manager, it was, you felt so bad because you felt like, well, there's this bond. Where have they been for the last 1.5 years? But ultimately on that case, in that situation, the relative did take precedence, and the child was adopted by the aunt. The aunt had felt that if she got involved early on, that the parents wouldn't do the work. That if they know we're taking care of the child, they're not going to get into treatment. They're not going to get that mental health service. They're not going to do what they need to do. And so that's kind of why she decided to stay back. However, I wish she would have been more involved on the case and visited more, like been that aunt or been involved. So I will request that of relatives, that connections for children are very important. Just because a child goes into foster care doesn't mean you're not grandma and grandpa anymore, doesn't mean you're not uncle and aunt anymore. Those connections are vital and important for these children. And so even if the child's in foster care through the tribe or through the state, we still need relatives involved. We're not asking them to take care of the child day to day if they've already told us they can't do that. Well, maybe if there's something coming up in Native American culture, what I've seen is funerals are pretty big gatherings, and sometimes it could be a few days. And we had a relative call and say, the grandpa passed away. There's going to be a big gathering. Can we take the kids along? Absolutely. So we're going to look at, okay, who's in charge of the kids, who's responsible for them. We already had a relationship established with that relative. To me, that's what's important, because from the other side of it, when you're the foster home and you've had this child for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and then all of a sudden a relative comes up and says, okay, we're ready, we're going to step in now. That's devastating on that end too. But family is important. Family's vital. Those connections are important. Often, I'm old. I don't look as old as I am, but I've been around a while, that I have seen kids that are adopted, and when they turn 18, or they get to that certain age, they want to know who their birth family is. They could have had the most wonderful adoptive family in the world, but there's just, when you think about kids that age, they're trying to find their identity. They're trying to figure out who they are. Where do I come from? Why does this seem to matter? And that doesn't seem to matter. It's part of growing up, and they're going to search for that. So the best thing relatives and foster parents can do is keep connections, keep that pathway open, keep talking to other relatives. In some situations, you might have a caseworker up here telling you a different end result. I can mainly speak from experiences that I've had. And you've probably had some foster parents take things further, or, you know, from a state perspective, there's been different outcomes, but you know, family's vital and family's important. And so are our foster parents, and we have to take care of their hearts and make sure when those transitions happen, that they happen in the right way, and that you know, that child has a chance to get to know oh, this is my auntie. Okay, let's let them get to know them and spend some time with them. So
Leslie, how are we doing? We ready to,
Those kids are
those
wild.
kids, the
That's how
kids are
we're
ready for us to
doing it.
wrap it up. And
We're
so,
just trying to tire them out for you guys, I think. Let's see here. Is there an easy way to validate enrollment across state lines?
do you have that?
Does that make sense?
It's kind of sort of, but I think that most tribal workers are gonna know that already. Like, so once we got them, we know, because we know the families, right? So we know mom's enrolled, we know dad's enrolled, if they're both from the same tribe. We're already gonna know whether the child is enrolled or not. In these two particular cases that we had, mom was enrolled with us, guys, but we didn't know that dad, we knew dad, and he's been living on our reservation for the longest time, majority of his life, but he's not enrolled in our tribe. He was enrolled in Cheyenne River. So when we got with the child, it was like, okay, we just assumed automatically Standing Rock because they both live here, they're from here. But when we actually went to enrollment, they're like, not enrolled here. Well, where are they enrolled? And then we find out they're enrolled in Cheyenne River. So somewhere along the line, I'd say probably the first 6 months, we're gonna know whether they're enrolled or not, and if they're not, where they're enrolled.
So Raquel, does your office enrollment contact the out-of-state enrollment offices, or who's doing that?
So what we do is if we know that dad is from Spirit Lake, Turtle Mountain, Rosebud, Oglala, we go to our enrollment and we'll put dad on a enrollment inquiry. Here's child, date of birth, here's mom, and then dad or mom, whoever is not enrolled in our tribe, will say in parentheses some Oglala Sioux tribe. And then sorry,
Water.
and then they take that enrollment piece and then they call to Oglala and say, we got a dad or mom is they enrolled? Are they enrolled? Yes, no, and if they are, then they send back the enrollment piece. And that's how we know.
And I think and from the state perspective or the zone perspective, in state, I feel like our tribal offices, enrollment office are pretty responsive. If we call or if we send our inquiry out, we typically are getting something back pretty quickly. If we send it out and say, here's this person, you know, we give them the family tree kind of, they'll send us a letter saying the child is not eligible, or the child is eligible and you can start enrollment processes. And that's when we would join with the parents to start that process. But, you know, we have some out of state tribes that we work with. And so I really, in all honesty, I can't speak to how quickly they get back to us, but I would say in state, we get responses back pretty quickly, especially if they are enrolled.
That's great. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up tonight. And I just want to extend my appreciation again to all of you for your willingness to have us come, and to Raquel and Natalie for taking your evening to be with us as well. But because I need to say something about the two very amazing licensors who are in this room, because I couldn't do the work that I do. And we couldn't get you all licensed without Rachel and Becca. And I don't know if there is a Nexus Path licensor here. Okay, yes, very good. Oh, and there's an ask worker. Okay, yeah, very good. So thank you to Rachel and Becca for your work here in this area to get everyone licensed and not expiring. We need you to have your paperwork done, and you're going to be in for a real treat because April 1st is going to mark some changes for all of you, which will be a benefit. Less paperwork, longer licensing periods. And so get ready for some really good times ahead. So that's a whole nother day, and you can invite me back at another time if you'd like. But thank you very much. It's Social Work Month. So when you are talking to a social worker, say Happy Social Work Month to them. And in May, it is Foster Care Month. So another way to appreciate all of you and the system efforts. So keep up the great work. Thank you.